Hey, welcome back. The last time we drafted this summer top, so today we are going to start sewing the top. Let's go. I've already cut out all my pattern pieces, including the lining. For the upper part, I added half-inch seam allowance on the neckline, the left side, and the bottom. On the placket, I added allowance at the top and the right side. For front A, I added allowance on each side, and for front B, I added allowance on the top and the left side. The back piece was cut on fold since there's no zipper, and I've already traced out the darts. Now let's begin. I'm starting by pinning front A and B together, both on the main fabric and the lining, and sewing them with half-inch seam allowance. Next, I'll pin the darts, making sure the lines are aligned to avoid mistakes. You can hand baste first if that feels easier. To secure the dart, either use a backstitch at the tip or tie double knots. Then I'll press the darts flat and open up the seams. For the upper part, I'm placing the pieces right sides together and pinning only along the neckline. I'll sew with half-inch seam allowance. For curves like this, it's best not to notch. That can distort the neckline. Instead, I'm trimming down the seam allowance by about a 1/4 inch. After that, I'll push the seam allowance to the wrong side and carefully understitch close to the seam. Next, I'll run a gathering stitch across the bottom of the upper part. I'm concentrating most of the gathers towards the center front. Once that's done, I'll pin the upper part to the lower part of the top, right sides together. Then I'm placing the lining piece on top, right side of the lining facing the wrong side of the upper part. That way, the upper part is sandwiched in between both lower pieces. I'll sew and trim down the seam allowance by 1/4 inch. For the back piece, I'm pinning the main fabric and the lining together along the neckline only, and I'll sew with 1/2 inch seam allowance. This time I notched the neckline. I'll go ahead to understitch the neckline. To join the front and back pieces together, I'm separating them like this, placing them right sides together while aligning the seams and pinning carefully. Then I'll sew with 1/2 inch seam allowance. After sewing, I'll press the seams open to reduce bulk at the shoulders. Next, I'll hem the top. Remember we added about 3/4 inch allowance during drafting. I've trimmed off the lining hem by 1/2 inch, so the allowance left on the lining is just 1/4 inch. To hem the front pieces, I'll flip it open like this. This allows the lining to sit neatly underneath the upper part. Then I'm pinning the main fabric and the lining at the hem, right sides together, and I'll sew with 1/2 inch seam allowance. When I press the hem after sewing, you will notice that the main fabric rolls slightly to the inside by about 1/4 inch. This keeps the lining from showing and gives the hem a clean, professional finish. I'll repeat the same step for the back piece. Next, I'll join the sides of the top together. Then finish the raw edges neatly with a serger. Moving on to the button placket. I'm using a very light interfacing. It's called paper interfacing. I cut it to match the length of the placket with a width of 2 inches. I'll fuse the interfacing to the placket, leaving about ½ inch on the sides and the top. Then I'm folding the top edge by ½ inch. And I'll also fold one side of the placket by ½ inch and press. Note that this folded side is not the edge that will be attached to the top. Then I'll fold the placket again by 1 inch and press. I'm pinning the placket to the top, making sure the folded edge sits on top. And I'll sew it down with ½ inch seam allowance. To reduce bulk, I'll grade the seam allowance by trimming the top seam allowance only by ¼ inch. Trimming only the top seam allowance, not the placket seam allowance. Then I'm cutting off the excess length of the plackets, leaving about ½ inch at the hem. Once the placket is secured, I'll top stitch close to the folded edge for extra support. Now for the sleeves, I'll be using a sleeve slope to draft them. I have a video on how to draft a sleeve. It's really easy to follow, so be sure to check that out. I drafted this sleeve in half since both sides are identical. That also makes it easier to slash and spread. The sleeve length is 5 inches and I didn't add seam allowance on the pattern itself because we'll be adding that after slashing and spreading. To start, I'm marking my slash lines. No strict measurements here. I'm adding 2 inches towards the center front. Then I'll space the rest of the slashes about 1 3/4 inches apart. On pattern A, I'll raise the top edge by 1.5 inches and connect into a smooth curve. Then I'm adding 1/2 inch seam allowance to the top and side of the sleeves. For the hem allowance, I'll decide based on my elastic. My elastic is 3/8 of an inch wide, so my elastic channel needs to be about 1/2 inch wide. For a clean finish, I'm adding an extra 1/4 inch to hide the raw edge first, then I'll add 1/2 inch fold for the channel. That makes it a total hem allowance of 3/4 inch. In this video, I added more, but I'll trim that off later. I'm folding the hem allowance under the pattern before cutting, so that once the hem is sewn, the sleeve edge will line up cleanly. I'll top stitch along the hem to create the channel. Then I'll gather the sleeve at the top edge. To cut the elastic length, I'm subtracting 2 inches from my bicep measurement. That gives me a snug but comfortable fit. To attach the sleeves, I've turned the top inside out while keeping the sleeve right side out. Then I'm pinning them together at the armhole, right sides together, aligning all seams, and I'll sew with 1/2 inch allowance. Finally, the buttonholes. They'll be on the right placket. At the top edge of the placket, I'm marking a 1/4 inch downwards. Then I'll mark the midpoint of the placket. My button is 1/2 inch long, so I'll make each buttonhole about 3/4 inch long, and it will be spaced 1 inch apart. Always give a little extra length to the buttonhole so the button slips through easily. And remember to center each buttonhole on the placket. So here's the finished top. I really enjoyed making it and I hope you do too. If you give it a try, let me know how it goes. So if you really enjoyed this video and found this video helpful, please like, share and subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.